There is something fundamentally strange, bizarre, indescribable, inconceivable about the son of Donald Trump Jr. And that's what I want to explore in this segment. No, I want to review, as we've been doing recently, his most recent podcast. He's quite the podcaster these days. And my colleague Jack put together some clips from this hour-plus long podcast. I think he specifically chose the clips that would trigger me the most. And this podcast is called Triggered, so that's fitting. But I'm just warning you, I can feel rants coming, okay? So you've been duly warned. And here's Donald Trump Jr. Just every time we see him deteriorated, dilapidated. No, I don't know. I'm just looking for some alliteration there. And seemingly experiencing some leaking of the brain out of the ears medically. Here's more. Or here's the clip.
To any election being over at this point. So I'm not saying
I don't want to mislead
to win
people.
by
2 points, we have to win by 6 points, right? Because they so don't have the, hey, we can only cheat so much to get this guy across because no one's going to believe it. They don't care. That's what people don't understand. They don't care if people don't believe it. If they showed up with 450 million ballots for Joe Biden in a country of 350 million, they'd be like, it's the freest and most fair election ever. Like, what are you talking about? It's like, well, what about the 100 million that, No. I mean, that's got to, that's within the margin of error. That's totally fine. It's acceptable. There's no shame anymore. It doesn't matter. It's just about the win.
Yeah.
I love the blank stare at the end. Before going to the one that's going to make me the most upset, and yes, I know some of you get annoyed when I'm fidgeting with a pen, but I just feel more authoritative when I have a pen to make my point. Donald Trump Jr., okay, fine, I'll put it away. Gosh, you convinced me. Is saying that we're the irrational ones, right? We're the crazy ones. Because we are going to say that even if 100 million more votes come in than the population of the country, that's still within the quote, unquote, margin of error. When, of course, as we're talking about elections, there's one side that continues repeatedly continues pushing evidence-free nonsense about our elections, as shown by every court case, every investigation, even done by the Trump campaign, every audit, every recount. And another side that wants us to respect the legitimacy of our elections because that's democracy and that's what the evidence bolsters. We have such secure elections. We talked about in a recent segment as it pertained to a voter ID conversation. If you analyze billions of votes cast in the United States, we have such low voter fraud figures. It's practically nothing. Go us. Go America. But not MAGA. They instead push the evidence-free nonsense that then creates a bubble for them to live in where it seems rational to say, the left's so crazy, they might say that 100 million more votes than not just voters, but the population of America is actually acceptable. So we have to, what do they say now? Win too big to rig. Just vile stuff. If you appreciate the work that we do to put together the show every day, a way you can show that and help us continue to grow is by clicking the subscribe button. It's easy, it's free, but it makes all the difference. Back to the video. But here's the one that's really cray-cray.
Of Americans, and that's not okay in this country. At least it wasn't until the last few months.
Correct. And listen, I've been the fight fire with fire guy for forever, and yet when you hear my father talk about it, he's like, no, my only revenge is going to be success. For the country, I'm like, man, I feel like I don't want to take the high road for him, but I think he's genuinely going to do that. Just like, I know he's the insurrectionist. He's going to try to hold on to power forever according to the left and all these things. And yet, how do I know that didn't happen? Because he didn't actually try to do that in 20. He left on January 20th. He left the White House. He flew down to Florida. Like that was it.
But there's a path for him to not have to.
So, I know if you're a regular viewer, you've heard this rant before. I'm sorry. But if their lies are repetitive, the response to them might be the same. But imagine as his dad in 2 different criminal cases, is currently being prosecuted for trying to interfere with our elections to hold on to power. And he's still able to pretend like, do you know how I know? Trump want to do something authoritarian, like trying to hold on to power even if he lost the election? Because he didn't try last time. He left office after trying and failing. The best argument you can make in favor of Trump, given the facts of what he attempted, is, guys, don't worry. He's so incompetent. He's such a failure that if he tried to do this authoritarian stuff, he would fall on his face, like he did last time. Now, last time led to a violent attack on the Capitol, but he won't necessarily actually successfully lead an insurrection. He'll still have to leave if he tries something like that. That's the best argument you have, and that's why they don't make it. And instead, they're able to look reality in the face and say, no, we're going to live in our own little reality where it's common sense. That's part of what was striking me about this. Sort of the pretentious tone of saying, the left, they're so crazy. They're saying that Trump would try to hold on to power even if our democracy said otherwise. Crazy people. He left office. That didn't happen last time. I mean, let's get back to talking about his legal troubles, which include 2 cases where he is alleged to have done illegal things in the interest of holding on to power despite losing. So I'll stop there. Here's more. Urgh.
And part of it is because we'll fact check the Democrats. They don't even try. They just give up.
And this is someone named Alex Marlow. So now you know.
Us this whole space where we can fact check all these lies. Joe Biden is a serial liar. Let me explain to anyone in the audience.
I'm sorry, as you're listening to this, just try to absorb without getting too upset the projection, okay?
The Democrats. They don't even try. They just give us this whole space where we can fact check all these lies. Joe Biden is a serial liar. Let me explain to anyone in the audience who doesn't understand what President Trump was doing with the golf handicap stuff. If you're willing to lie about your golf scores, you're willing to lie about everything. That's why Trump was hammering that. That's why he was showing the world that Joe Biden, who could not break 120, acting like he can shoot in the 70s and telling that to the public is insane. And that's what Trump was going. It's not true. You can't do that, Joe. And that shows a signal. Everyone thinks Joe's such a decent guy, such an honest guy. He is indecent and he is dishonest. It's fundamental about his character. And I think that President Trump really did a good job revealing that to the public.
Now, before getting to my response to that clip and the projection, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. While there's one way better candidate, undeniably, on the thing we're about to watch, this wasn't a great moment for either of them, I'll say.
President Biden?
You can see he is 6'5" and only 223 pounds, or 235 pounds. Well, you said 6'4", 200. Well, anyway, that's it. Anyway, just take a look at what he says he is, and take a look at what he is. Look, I'd be happy to have a driving contest with him. I got my handicap, which when I was vice president, down to a 6. But by the way, I told you before, I'm happy to play golf with you if you carry your own bag. Think you can do it?
That's the biggest lie. He's a 6 handicap of all.
I was an 8 handicap.
Yeah.
8.
Never.
But I have, you know how many?
I've seen you swing. I know you swing.
Okay, let's
not act like children.
President Trump, we're going to
21
turn.
Let's not act.
Yeah. Rough stuff. I don't know if it serves the American people to argue about your golf score. But it's interesting that Mr. Alex Marlow and Don Jr. would say Biden's the one who's fundamentally indecent and dishonest when those terms could not apply better to their guy, Trump. And even bringing up golf, it's an excellent point, the general one that's being made, which is that when you come across someone who can lie about the small, inconsequential things, that should be a sign to you that probably on the big things, they're going to be pathological. And that's Trump. Notoriously, many books have been written about people who go golfing with him and see the way that he's willing to lie, cheat. Can you steal in golf? Lie and cheat in his golf game. And that is a little bit of a signal. Cheating in golf doesn't mean that you'll go on to be the person who tells tens of thousands of lies in your presidency like Trump did. But cheating at golf can be a sign of something bigger, and that's what we've seen with Trump. So it's interesting Alex Marlow would make that point, seemingly just perfectly applying to the person he's actually making the point in defense of. Here's one more moment.
Very easily be convinced to go back to this is all good, stay the course, and he'll be out in 4 months stronger than ever.
Yeah, I'm sort of torn on it myself. Like when the news first broke, I mean, what was it now? A couple months ago, I was like, hey, the only person happier about this than the Democrats is probably Steve himself, right? Like
Same.
he was good. I was like, he's loving every second of this. And now I'm like, now, once it becomes real, and I know they wanted to jail me as well, and they're certainly trying to still jail my father, and they probably come up with an excuse to try to jail me again sometime in the not too distant future, one way or the other. But I'm not sure. And I just hope it's a wake up call to those to understand that. But I also hope it's a wake up call.
So they're talking about Steve Bannon going to prison after being convicted on contempt of Congress charges. But, victimhood has become a currency in MAGA. And I just want to say to the leaders of this movement, Donald Trump Jr., Donald Trump, Alex Marlow, Steve Bannon, Marjorie Taylor Greene, whoever else, you're not a victim. Maybe your loss in 2020 was just that. It was a loss. People lose. Hillary Clinton lost the Electoral College. Sometimes you lose. Maybe that wasn't the beginning of the greatest conspiracy to take down your movement ever. That's so unfair and proof that you're so horribly victimized. Maybe the guy who has been found liable for fraud in a court of law, liable for sexual abuse in a court of law, indicted 4 times, convicted of 34 felonies in a court of law. Maybe he is just in the habit of doing some bad stuff and he's not being wrongly victimized. And maybe Donald Trump Jr., you don't have to prove that you're a warrior for the cause by making up myths of you being put in jail in the future. In recent episodes that we've talked about of Don Jr., he's pushed the idea that he's going to be assassinated. Tucker Carlson also, he's going to be assassinated. Get over yourself, okay? Get over yourself. Let me know what you thought of Don Jr.'s latest podcast, Triggered, and my responses to what he had to say in the comments. And if you want to get an extra episode of the show and support the work that we're doing by clicking the join button below, I would greatly appreciate that.